We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome. It is Thursday, May 8th. This is Shawnee County Board of County Commissioners work session. I'm Aaron Mays. I represent District 3, currently serving as chairman. On my left is Commissioner Bill Rippon, representing District 1. On my right is Commissioner Kevin Cook, representing District 2. And then our county councilor is at my far right, Rich Eckert. Good morning to all of you. Let's go ahead and dive in. We've got a big presentation today for the 2024 final ambulance compliance report and the 2025 National EMS Week. So let's turn it over to Nelson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nelson Castile, Ambulance Compliance. Pleased, as always, to be here for our quarterly report that's required by Resolution 2023-14. We're going to cover the annual report here for fiscal year 2024. I'll start off by just saying that this report is held this time of year every year. Out of all the compliance requirements, most of them end on December 31st of that year, with the exception of the audited financials, which they're required to have in by May 1st or face a penalty, and they have, for the life of this contract, they've always had them in here good and early, and that enables us just to keep moving forward. So I hope it's not long, but if you have any questions going along, feel free to ask, or if you want to wait, whatever your pleasure is. So each month we send out a report that it deals with the response times or any other non-compliance with the contract, so that we can notify you of what's going on and what's not going on. This final report is a high-level view that takes in the whole year as a whole, and it allows us to say whether there was any non-compliance anywhere or compliance. To better understand the contract, I get questions on a weekly basis about what does the contract entail. There's currently 6 contracts that I oversee. Most of those have been amendments. They are all on the ambulance compliance website, along with all the updates that we send out. Those get posted on there. Here's what everybody wanted to hear. AMR is in full compliance with the contract. They've only been out of compliance 4 months since 2017. Those 4 months were when they dipped below the 80% by just a couple of decimal point percentages when we were coming out of the pandemic, and they were getting hit really hard there in the late summer, early fall. That just meant with the response times, they were compliant with everything else. Other than that, there's a fine structure. They paid the fine structure for being under the 80% for those 4 months. They resolved it through working with everybody involved. So everything is looking good for 2024.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman. Nelson, recently KSNT News ran a news article that read that AMR had the most fines in the month of May that they've ever had before, which would, give your average reader or participant that KSNT is advertising to that AMR isn't doing a very good job. But you're just telling us that they are in compliance, so were they doing a bad job? Is KSNT right? Or were they doing a good job, as you're reporting? I'm confused.
So they took the information for January and February of this year and compared it all the way back to 2017. The only concern I have is that we have sat up here on a regular basis and said, please do not use the stats from 2020 and 2021 because they're going to be skewed because of the pandemic. Where we are right now with the full 3 years that we've come out, I'm satisfied. I'm even satisfied for January and February. The number that we want them to always hit is above the 80%. That is the biggest number they want to hit. Along the way, there's going to be long responses. So the answer, sir, would be yes. They're doing a fantastic job of meeting the contract.
So KSNT's news maybe needs to follow up with that.
Yes.
Look forward to that article.
And I forgot to introduce my partners over here, John Antrim with AMR and Mickey Huber with AMR, and they'll be available to come up here and answer any questions. But I am satisfied. If you dig into the contract or dig into the job aids or the helpful aids that we've also put on there, it explains how they can pay large fines but still be in compliance.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So, yes, they are in full compliance. I want to go over a couple. This is kind of where I like to kind of tell folks where we are on things, because we've had some wonderful things happen this year. Also had some not so wonderful things happen, but we have all made it through very well. We're in good shape based on what they were faced with. So the nurse navigation problem, not the nurse navigation problem. Program. I'm going to owe John a bunch of coffee now, thank you. So the nurse navigation program, we've had a full year and 7 months. By the time we had got to the end of 2024, we're continuing on with that. We've had some issues come up. Yesterday, I worked with the AMR communications people on a couple of those. I think that the program is viable, and I think there are some things that we smooth out some nuances for to continue, but it has helped. We've seen the AMR dispatch. We've seen a large amount of calls, and if you look at the stats, even the ones that KS&T put up, we are seeing a large number of calls come into the 911 center and a large number of medical calls going over there. Thankfully, we've had that third dispatcher in there to help with that. One of the graphs I'm going to show you later deals with what we call the Card 33, which is the interfacilities, which means they have bad labs, but they're in a nursing home and they need to go to the hospital. Those used to be all a part of the system. If AMR took 45 minutes to get there, they got fined heavily for it. As a part of Contract 71-2023, which also implemented the nurse navigation program, we took those out, and I'll explain here a little bit why that's significant. I do want to say that I look at those, there's between 250 and 300 of those a month. I've looked at those, and there has been no intentional non-compliance. We've had some wrong coding, which when you deal with 30-some thousand calls a year, sometimes that happens. But they have not used the transfer button to circumvent compliance and the lateness. The third dispatcher, I guess I skipped ahead, but here it is. That third dispatcher has been fantastic to have in there. It's $2,500 a month. AMR provides that third dispatcher. I believe last year there was only 2 months where we did not pay them because they weren't there more than 50% of the time. They also brought in a bunch of traveling dispatchers. They brought in a bunch of folks that helped lessen what was going on in that room. I don't have the stats available right now because Kansas 911 Coordinating Council changed their reporting system, but we're going to hopefully get those out in a report this summer. The basic life support, this came about in 19, and we had a trial on it, and during the trial COVID hit, which we got to see what this could really do. The BLS units have been fantastic as well to get there to those calls. The field force and fire mobile that the commission purchased for all the first responder organizations, including AMR, that has served to lessen traffic. It has served to provide information on the scene. It has really worked well. We're going to try to roll that out to more of our folks. Some of the departments are using it constantly. We even have one department that swore that they would never use it, and now they use it for attendance, and that's great. The one thing I'd like to kind of tout here is we have several departments that are going to be going the extra step and do the advanced EMT program. Paramedics in this state, and if you have some regulatory questions about it, John and Mickey are here to answer those. But as I understand it, across the state, to be a paramedic in Kansas, you have to have an associate's degree, which when I took it, I think it was 64 to 68 hours. It's also an 18-month program for a paramedic to go through to meet all the things, and then they have to come out and do a lot of their field stuff. There's a lot of folks out there not willing to go those extra steps. John is a member of the Kansas Emergency KEMSA, Kansas Emergency Medical Services Association. Is that right? Their association is working with the state to figure out, how do we get more people in there? But in the meantime, having advanced EMTs out there does help quite often. One of the issues we've run into, we have a lot of homeless camps, and we get a lot of medical calls. There's a couple of locations throughout the city that those are not the easiest to get to. So myself and the communications managers, we are working up a mapping and a zoning so that we can put a spot both on the AMR side of the room on their map and on the Shawnee County maps to say, this is where it is, and they can figure out how to get there.
Nelson, I want to stop you there for
Yes,
just a
sir.
second if I can. So help me understand that a little bit more. If a person's not familiar with the homeless camps in Topeka, maybe you see a homeless encampment as you're driving over the Kansas Avenue Bridge, and you can see some tents down by the levee along the Kansas River. Are you talking about if there was a medical emergency?
Yes, sir.
At one of the tents, how do you even get to them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's one of them questions that there's not a firm answer because of where are they, whose property is it, what's the medical call. I'll give you an example of one that was really interesting. I grew up on a farm, but at 10 o'clock in the evening in the middle of fall, I'm the last person you want walking through soybeans this tall, a quarter mile to go find down off the levee. And so they've had to get creative. AMR has, I believe, two med carts. A couple of fire departments have med carts. When that happens, it normally involves police, fire, and EMS all figuring out how do we get to where we need to get to. It's easy to look down there and see a path. There's a lot of the railroad property now that they've built fences. They've got locks. The other thing is the ones along the railroad, if you get within 10 feet of the railroad, they don't want to run a train. We got a couple of really fun choke points here where trains come through. So the dispatchers working together in that room, working with the others. Sometimes they're lucky and one of us is on duty that goes out and sees these camps or tries to map them. Other times it takes a little bit of time to get there. I think we probably average about 3 calls a week at one of the camps.
Sounds very complicated, that you may know where the person's at, but you have no physical way to get there.
That's correct, sir. There's some of them that you have to go 1.5 miles out of your way and come back to get to, just with the way the railroad tracks, the levees, and now the viaduct construction, that's kind of shut off some of our avenues. So that's one of the things we're going to work on, and hopefully July or August I'll have an update for you.
All right.
The joint medical director and myself, we still have been holding office hours. I try to go out, see the fire department, see the first responder organizations, figure out from them if they've got questions or concerns. The joint medical director also holds office hours. So far, the attendance has been minimal, but with some of the endeavors that myself and the county councilor are working on, we may see some more of those to visit with them. The radio, this is the big project that we did. It started last year in February. Hopefully today it is finished, or at least to a finished spot. From February of last year to February of this year, we looked at how do we communicate with EMS and the first responders and the law enforcement. We developed a template, and I think that we've got it in solid enough now. We've worked a lot of the bugs out. It allows the fire departments to talk directly to the AMR crews coming. that with their fire mobile and their crew force, it's really helped the communications on a lot of these calls, so. Going forward, we've got a lot of projects going. We have not held some of our meetings in April and May because we have a lot of projects going, but starting on June 1 are the ones that were appointed, the ones that were designed as a part of the resolution. We're going to be looking at and going out and getting more information from. We've got quite a few projects we're working on, but we're going to prioritize those as they come. The fly car, I give kudos to Mickey at least twice a month. The fly car, that is an AMR paramedic, normally the supervisor, but it can be somebody else, that if they need to back up or go to a BLS call, or if they need to go to a serious call, or if they're the only one on the call, they also have been putting what they call a status partner in place. That person basically hangs around the AMR headquarters, does the work there, and the minute they know, hey, we got a serious call we got to go on, or they get hit with a surge, them and the fly car can go together, or they can pull a unit together. They've also been very helpful in the bariatric patient calls. They may have a unit that can go to a bariatric patient call, but they may need to stop by headquarters and switch things out. Sometimes they are able to call that status partner or the fly car and say, bring that out to us, we'll meet you there, and we'll take care of business. And then the fun stuff, AMR and I have gotten to spend a lot of time together in the last 12 months. We've had stuff at the Expo, we've had stuff at Forbes, at Hummer. We've had a lot of really good planned events. AMR with Mickey especially, we've been able to set up some of the planning and thoughts and theories on mass casualty, also how best to get around. The funnest thing I think we did was the air show. We actually got to enjoy the air show. We surprisingly didn't have that many incidents. The funnest part of it was apparently we did not know that there were 3 C-47s in the display area. We were told there was one, and it got a little entertaining when we were looking for a patient, and they said, how can you not see me? I'm at the C-47. And so that was another one of the lessons learned that we took out of that. And I believe we have an air show coming up in fall of 2026 again. The other item that's not on here, some of us have been contacted about the World Cup 2026 that will be coming, and I believe that they're going to be reaching out to KIMSA, KEMA, the EMs, a lot of the first responders to figure out how to handle that large influx of maybe a couple of million people coming into northeast Kansas. Yes, sir.
Nelson, what does this fly car look like? Is it actually a car, a pickup? How's it equipped?
It's a what?
That's right.
So it's an SUV, kind of like what you drive.
Is it equipped to do a call? I mean, it's got
It
everything.
can do everything but transport.
Okay, all right.
So we're finally to a point that I'm really happy. We have 3 full years of data post-COVID. This contract was put together pre-COVID. We saw during COVID how we had to make some changes. We now have 3 full years of data that we can look at. We can see what's the status of the system here. It's a different world. It really is. So at the bottom of this, I'd like you to see the words in red. It says, with no IFT included. So as a part of that contract change, as part of the negotiations, we took the interfacility out of the system. When we do that, if you look, it would look like that 2023 was down from 2022, and it would look as 2024. This, if we had kept the IFT in, you will see that we've had some rather large increases. several thousand calls, that means that you go from 65 to 70 calls a day to potentially 85 to 90 calls a day. All the shifts work 12 hours. We're seeing, the other day, one of them had 15 runs, and I believe out of the 15 runs, there were 11 transports. That's a busy day.
Nelson,
sir.
can you slow down just a little bit and explain an IFT or interfacility transfer?
sorry.
to
I was
those-
thinking the same thing, yeah.
I mean, because I think that most of us have some working knowledge of it, but for everybody else, what is an interfacility transfer?
So we use that term for if you're at a nursing home and you don't have an emergency, but you got bad labs that day and they need you to go to the ER, they don't have to go screaming down there with a fire truck and an ambulance. They can schedule that and say, okay, hey, we're going to come and pick this person up. Some of the minor things that they do of, hey, the doctor wants this person to go to ER, if they are not in the top 5 high priority type of ailments, then they can move that over to an interfacility if an RN or higher, that'd be a registered nurse or higher, has examined them and on their license says this person does not need to go via the 911 system. There's we have other hospitals such as Kansas Rehab Hospital, which is like 5 feet from Stormont Vale. They may need a patient to go from there over to the ER. That's an interfacility. On the previous contract, they had to get to those on time or they got fined for it.
Nelson, if I'm looking at this and I'm taking out 2020, 21, because those are the pandemic and post-pandemic, but if I was to look at 2019 and then look at 2023, again, not being 100% accurate, it would look like there was about a 5,000 increase.
There was.
And so what's fueling that?
The-
What changed?
Well, I'll just say the pandemic changed. People that remember five and some years ago, they get that sniffle and they think worst case they got to go in. I do know, I'm not a medical professional, but I do know that there's talk out there that a lot of these folks with long COVID, we see a lot of folks, they don't want to wait to go to the doctor, they're in pain. Some of them are legitimately sick or need an ambulance, but right now the ambulance service is basically being used as, hey, I need to go here and I need to go here now. There are a lot of what I would say are the alpha and omega calls where they're just sick, but they don't want to wait, so they take the ambulance in. Some of those get switched over to nurse nav, which is great.
That seems like a very expensive taxi ride.
It is. I was not going to say those words, but since you brought them up, we have people that they need a taxi ride. They will get a ride to the hospital. As soon as they get them off the cot, they're in triage. It's bye, I'll see you later, and they'll walk over to wherever it is they need to go. We see that quite often. AMR cannot refuse within the statutes and the regulations, which I'll have John explain, refuse to take a patient, even the one, and they can't force somebody to refuse service. Likewise, they can't base their decision on a patient's ability to pay. They have to assume everybody's going to pay them, and they have to treat them accordingly. That's a part of the contract.
It would seem that those individuals are taking away services from people that have real emergencies.
Yes. I can't think of the lady's name up at the GMR mothership, but she had a very good quote about why we have a lot of lates. The other thing is, and I'll let Mickey and John cover this here in a little bit, it's done by priority. And if you are a low priority, if you just got the flu, but we have higher priority, they're going to take care of these first because that's their job. Probably 90% of the fines that they are issued are these very, very low acuity calls. There are very few fines on the high acuity calls that we see.
All right.
So, but you are correct, there was a 5,000 increase. That's concerning to me because AMR is basically having to do the same thing they did in 2019, but they're doing it 6 years later with less resources and more calls for service. And that's one of the things that I'm working with the county counselor on to refine that and look and see, hey, what do we really need to be doing here?
Okay, thank you.
Speaking of fines, this seems to be a hot topic. So out of all the calls that AMR arrived on, this is where they arrived. If they don't arrive on a call, then the compliance or fines does not kick in whatsoever. They have to arrive on the call. They can get canceled. The call could be a false alarm. There's many reasons why they won't arrive, and I'll show you a graph on that shortly. But 2023, that was a fun year. We had 3 snowstorms and I believe 4 heat emergencies. So we saw an increase in a lot of those lower level, low acuity calls. For 2024, we're under 5%. We've been under 5% all the way through for all the years. In the report, you'll see each month what the percentage was, how many calls. We also do a chart here. This is on all dispatched calls. So this means, hey, they got a call. Out of all the dispatched calls, still less than right at 4%, which when you figure 28 to 30,000 calls, that's really remarkable in my eyes. This gives you the actual fines. This tells we were actually down from 2023. As I said, there were a lot of nuances in 2023 that we had to deal with. I also forgot about the 2 cyber attacks that we had to work through. They don't, when we have those things happen, they don't just let us stop doing the work. We still got to be out there. 2020, you'll see it's really low, but that was because of a lot of the exemptions we had. Contributing, and Commissioner Cook, thank you for the question because you reminded me, contributing to what some of the fines are is the wait time in the hospitals. It's not like television, like Mother Jugs and Speed, where you kick them out and just take right back off. You have to turn those people over. There has to be an information flow. There has to be some responsibility there by the statute regulations. And again, if you have questions on that, we can ask John. They may be stuck at the hospital for 25 to 30 minutes. They optimally, their dispatchers, and I don't remember all their numbers, they have a timer on there when they arrive at the hospital, and when they hit a certain point, there's a decision point of, hey, you've been there too long, tell us why, or you've been there too long, here's your next call, you better hurry. And so it's a very interesting dynamic sometime. Out of all the fines, this is how much, and this is just how much they've paid in fines over the year. We're down to just a little above 40,000 this year. Again, that big one, the big drop in 20, that was because of COVID. The big increase in 23 dealt with the humongous amount of calls that we ran. Out of that, and I believe there was a quote in one of the articles, out of that, there's a first responder grant program that you all authorized us to implement in 2017 that we've kind of refined. The first responder organizations on June 1st of each year to July 1st of each year puts in an application to buy, using these grant funds to buy anything that's EMS related. We've seen a lot of equipment get bought. This also helps sustains the $25,000 each year for the fire mobile and the crew force app. This is the disbursement. You'll see here who has the high number right now, that's TFD, and it kind of goes down. There's a couple of the rural ones, including MTAA, that have not put in for as much, or what they put in has not cost as much. I do know we bought a large number of mannequins and training materials, and the departments across the county are working on getting those out. They've done some community stuff, they've done some in-house stuff. And then my favorite slide, this is what matters the most, that 80%. And you can see that in 2022, just coming out of COVID, that it was getting down there a little ways. 2023, we saw an increase, and then 2024, we're on the way up. They put more people out there on the street. They've really cracked the whip on some of the delays that they've got out there. They have also, and this is where it kind of pains me because of how we sometimes have to find AMR, or they decide to take what I call a long-distance transfer, meaning that they take it out of the county to like KU Med or Children's Mercy or St. Luke's or wherever to get this number and still maintain what they've had on the street. They're not always able to do that. And so that's kind of, that kind of pains me that we can't get that out. I will say, though, that they have worked very well with their competitors and some of the surrounding counties to help get people transported out when they need it. This is the big one that outlines, it breaks it down by zone, by month. If we look at the last two lines, we've included the IFT exemptions in there. The official numbers are up there where it says 911 system total, but when we add in the other exemptions that they get, these numbers used to be about 1,700, 1,800 per month. I think we hit a high finally. Yeah, we hit a high there in August of 24. It's 2,200 runs. That's a lot of runs that they arrived on, including with the IFT. August was a little interesting, and then it breaks down the 84% down there. That comes from aggregated across all the zones. There's 8 zones, and there's a map of that on the ambulance compliance website. The KTA has 4 zones, but that's just because they've got that humongous wall that runs down the middle, and we got to find a way to, ambulances don't jump over walls, so we got to, those are a little bit different there. This slide's in the wrong place, but I'll say it anyway, and I'll say it here when we talk about EMS week. These folks have all been excellent to work with. We have solved a large number of problems. We've come together on a couple of them. We've had some, even in 2025, we've had some happenings where at 2 a.m. we've had to get on a Zoom call to solve something. So I would like to thank all of these folks for what they've done for Shawnee County here. It is a whole community group effort, and we're still trying to learn where we need to go after the pandemic, but I think we're talking to each other and we're having meetings. Any questions? I'll let John come up here.
Good morning, Commissioners. John Antrim, Regional Director of Global Medical Response. I appreciate the question that was asked today, Commissioner Cook. I think it's important to know that the design of this contract, there are going to be fines. And it has been this way for as long as I've been here and even before. And it's not necessarily a measure of our performance. But what I'm here to stand in front of you today is to talk about this system is working. Like Nelson alluded, when you go to the ER, the first place you go is you go to triage. That nurse does an assessment of you, and you either go wait in the lobby for a couple hours or you go back immediately. And what we're seeing, like Nelson said, a large amount of these calls that we're fined on are those low acuity calls. Just to provide you some stats for what that looked like for the month of February. Of the calls that we were late to, 25% of those resulted in us not even transporting the patient. So we got there, we did an assessment, the patient refused to be transported to the hospital. 72% of them, when we transported those, We're triage code green. Triage code green means that there was no life-threatening injury, stable, probably didn't even need to go by ambulance. 27% of those were triage yellow. Yellow means that, you know, they're ill, but they're not likely to have a life-threatening condition that's going to occur to them anytime soon. They still needed to be seen. Probably an ambulance transport was appropriate, but there wasn't an immediate life threat. And less than 1% of all of those fine calls resulted in the patient being a critical patient. One of those I consider to be a success story because it was far southwest Topeka, and because of the things that we've implemented within this community with the early activation of Lifestar helicopters, we were actually able to get that patient probably back to the receiving facility quicker than if we took them via ground from that location. So we are doing great things in this system. I just think it's important that the data is out there, that these patients that we're typically getting fined or that we're late on are those low acuity patients. So.
Thank you.
Talk about paramedics really quick.
What's that?
Can you talk about paramedics?
Sure. I think it's no secret. You can get on any EMS journal across the United States and see, just like any healthcare profession, that there is a very there's a lack of medics within the United States. It's not an AMR problem, it's a nationwide problem. You know, we continue to find ways, increase our salaries, sign on recruitment bonuses, all those things to try and attract people to Topeka. The challenge is the amount of time that it takes someone to get their paramedic certification. Like he alluded to, within the state of Kansas, it is an associate's degree program. 18 months is the paramedic program itself. That does not include any of the prerequisites that they're required to have. So it could take anywhere from 2 to 2.5 years from the point that someone or we sponsor someone to become a paramedic, that we can get them through school. So we continue to work on trying to find innovative ways to attract and grow our own through sponsorships and with our own organization.
And you do partner with local universities and Washburn Tech?
Absolutely. We provide field internship services for Washburn Tech, all of the paramedic programs within the community, Kansas City community, as well as we actually host a paramedic program from Barton County Community College within our home headquarters at 401 Southwest Jackson.
Great.
So with regards to that, you know, with nursing, they have different levels. There's the CNA and the LPN and the RN. Is there nothing like that with paramedics?
At the paramedic level, no. I mean, once you get your paramedic, you can go back and get your critical care certification, but outside of that. So within the EMS system, you have what's called the emergency medical responder. That is a first responder. So that's someone that's basic first aid, CPR, general assessment. Then you move to the EMT level with the emergency medical technician level. And after that, the advanced EMT is something that Nelson alluded to, which is, you know, it's kind of a gap, especially for those rural markets. It's a gap between the paramedic and the EMT. The EMT scope of practice within the state of Kansas is huge. They're able to give cardiac arrest meds, they're able to give pain meds, they're able to give anti-seizure medicines. So they've really proven valuable within the EMS system, but just not to the level of a paramedic. So that's kind of your levels within EMS.
Okay.
One last thing I talk about, Nelson kind of alluded to low acuity calls. You know, I think as we continue to talk about what the system looks like in Shawnee County, we really need to consider how we handle those. Like, Commissioner Mays, you sent me a podcast about the overuse of lights and sirens in EMS, and that is a fact. There is more and more trends and articles that are talking about that and studies that are done. We've got to figure out a way of actually moving those low acuity patients. One of the benefits of Nurse Nav, and we've seen 2,661 patients that we've sent to Nurse Nav. When we call those patients back, they are given a patient satisfactory study, or survey, I'm sorry, and 33% of those people that we talked to from the Nurse Nav believed that they had a life-threatening emergency. That's why they called us. This next part's a little scary. 40% didn't know how else to get care other than to call 911 to get to the ER. 23% had no other means of transportation when you mentioned what you mentioned there. And 4% believed that if they called us, we came, they would get to the ER quicker and they would get a bed in the ER, which is not the case. Those patients that are low acuity typically will go to the triage area of the hospital and go through that process. So that's some really interesting fun facts, and as a community and as we start to strengthen and build this system, those are things we really need to address.
Okay, thank you. All right, I guess we move on to the second part of our presentation.
Yes. This one will be quick. It's a little bit early this year, but I'm not going to be available during the EMS week this year, but May 18th through the 24th, National EMS Week for 2025. All those, I told you that slide was in the wrong spot. All those folks on there that do our EMS activities, all the first responders, and even some of those folks that we work with in the receiving facilities, I think it's great to honor them. There'll be a resolution on your consent agenda on Monday, because they are the front line out there. They do a lot of work out there, especially after this winter when it snowed, got icy. They were out there in that doing things. I believe it was back to the 90s in the AMR headquarters, because I think we had probably people sleeping there because there was nowhere else to go. And so that's what I'd like to say about that. There's, I believe the motto this year, we care for everyone. And if you have any questions or information, or if you want to pass something on, I know that John and them are going to be having some festivities, and they always seem to have some really good hot dogs and hamburgers over there during the week, and I believe they get to bring the crews in and see how it goes. So I myself can't do this job alone. I need all those folks out there, and we have a very good system here. We've had some unique problems that we've had to solve, some of them that you've mentioned, and we've come through very well. So I believe that's all for my presentation. If John or Mickey wants to talk about anything else, I'll leave it to them.
Any other comments, questions?
It's a little bit early, but we always appreciate everything that EMS does in Shawnee County, and it takes a lot of people to make sure that everything is getting delivered and taken care of, and when there's an emergency, we have the confidence to know that somebody's going to be there.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Obviously, we just need more people to do the work, more vehicles out there to do the work, and a better understanding of the system, I think, by the general public is welcomed. I know that the nurse navigation program is still pretty new. I think it's been a good, helpful endeavor, I feel like, for hopefully for you guys, but definitely for the citizens of Shawnee County to have that available for those low acuity calls. So happy to see progress there. It is a little bit puzzling, the number of calls going up by so much over the last few years. And so hopefully we can kind of get to the bottom of that over the next year or so and make a dent there. So any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is public comment. I don't have anyone signed up for that. How about administrative communications? Are there any administrative communications?
I am unfortunately up here to tell you that KDOT will be closing westbound I-70 from 10th Street to McVicker starting at 11 p.m. tonight. They hope to have it open again by Sunday afternoon. They did the eastbound a couple of weeks ago, but we had Easter and a couple of rainy things, and it can't be raining when they fix the road bed there. There's a lot of activities going on. Hopefully the news with KDOT and with the folks over at City Traffic Engineering are getting that out, that you're going to have to take either 10th Street or Gage to get around on the detour. This is hopefully the last time they have to do this until the fall, but it depends on how well the patches hold up. So.
Could you repeat you said it's westbound I-70?
Yep, westbound I-70. You won't be able to go further than the 10th Street exit. You'll have to get off there and go west on 10th, down to Gage, and then Gage back on. The McVicker exit will be open westbound, but you can't come up, I don't believe you're going to be able to come up from First Street until they get some restriping done.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other administrative communications? Commissioner Cook?
I know that Director Cole mentioned it on Monday, but a repeat, this is Department of Corrections Appreciation Week. I know that they're having some events over at the Department of Corrections to recognize their employees, and I just want to take a moment to recognize all the hard work that they do and all the efforts that they have put into making sure that those operations do run smoothly.
Yeah, and I know that three of us usually try and stop by over there to thank our employees, so I'll be stopping by at least for a little bit. And so, Commissioner Rippon, do you have anything?
Mother's Day is coming up. Get your cards in the mail.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy Mother's Day. I did see there's kind of a cool event coming to town this weekend. The Women's Professional Bowling League is having a professional bowling tournament at Westridge Lanes this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. Tonight they're having an event where local female bowlers can bowl with the professionals, and so that's kind of a cool thing. I believe it's free tonight, and then over the weekend it is a ticketed event, but kind of a neat thing. We don't see women's professional bowling in Topeka very often, and so try and make it out if you can. Next item on the agenda is executive session, and we do not have a need for executive session today, so we are adjourned.